Hello, Harvey from Ethel here. Today I'm going to show you how to make a really popular future bass style synth wobble, I guess you want to call it, and I'm going to show you exactly what I did. I'm just going to focus on the massive preset. I'm going to show you what I did in the massive preset and just show you what it sounds like before and after post-processing. So here's it with some drums and here's it without. With. So that's the sound. Hopefully you're interested in seeing how to make this sound. Just before I get into making the synth, I just want to say make sure that you subscribe to the channel, just because if you like future bass and you like other sort of bass heavy genres, this place is definitely the best place to check out. Click the little bell icon so you get notified each time that these videos come online. If you have any thoughts or any questions, leave them in the comments below and we'll try our best to answer them. Also, don't forget, if you want to either reverse engineer this sound or try this sound in your own projects and songs, you can download it in the description below and really try and see how it works for you. Okay, let's get into it. Okay, so we've just jumped into a fresh project and I'm going to get into exactly how we made that synth. So I started off with using Massive, just because it's a very, very popular synth, and I felt that what I needed for this wasn't too demanding, and Massive kind of gave the best ease of use. So this sound is a very sort of super saw type sound, so in which case we'll start with saws, as you could probably imagine. Sounds great, right? No, it doesn't. So if we just kind of go to envelope 4, because naturally the amp mod has this horrible envelope, so just put that all the way up. So it's just a long sustained note. Now, first of all, we're going to get the actual texture of the sound before we get the movement. So the main texture of the sound comes from the voicing. So in particular, the unison. So if we just bump the unison up, and we can see how big we want the sound. Turn it down a bit so it's not clipping. I think 11's about good. Now we use the pitch cutoff to detune each different voice. So quite a bit. So enough that it's just really detuned to make this ultra wide sound. Next, we're just going to add a noise oscillator. So we're going to use the bright noise just to add some sort of crispness on the top. Crispness, not Christmas. So that's good. So next we're going to go into reverb. So we're going to use a small reverb because it's quite a tight sort of sound, but it's giving it more space with the reverb. So we're just going to whack the dry wet up. So the way I work with reverbs mostly is I work with dry wet all the way up to get the sound in the room and then take it down to the amount I actually want. So I'm just going to design this sort of room that I have in mind, which is a very sort of small. Yeah, so that's pretty good. So we take it down to about here or so. And next we're going to use the dimension expander to kind of create it even wider, basically. And we're just going to bring the dry wet up a tiny bit so we can hear the effect. So that's pretty good for the minute. Okay, so the next thing, and pretty much the last thing, is actually where the LFO comes into play. Now, the LFO is obviously the most important part of this sound because it actually creates the movement. So first of all, we're going to set sync and then to 108. So I've got my BPM at about 120 or so. You can change it. In fact, let's just put it at 140. So the main purpose here is actually the position of where the wave starts when the LFO occurs. So I've set it about the trough, which is the lower part of the waveform, starts at the beginning, and the peak is in the middle, and then the trough back at the end. Now, the way we get this movement on the volume is we attach it to the sidechain of the amp. Now, basically what this does is, obviously you can't move it up or down because this is basically just on the volume, as you can hear. Now, obviously, if we move this to, like, for example, a saw wave, it's a lot more stabby. But we want this sort of smoother sort of waveform. So in which case, if you want to try something different and cool, you could try the stabby sort of plucky sound. I prefer the waveform, the sine wave, sorry. Now, the key to this sound is actually putting the LFO on pretty much everything. So we're putting it on the dry wet of the reverb. So we're kind of getting it up enough so it basically brings in the... it almost makes it a wider sound when the volume is actually active, if that makes sense. So when the sound is actually loud, when it's playing and not quiet, you know, in the peak of the LFO, the reverb is actually playing a lot louder. And the same with the dimension expander. So we'll whack this on here, maybe take it down, and maybe play some chords with it. And that's basically the sound. The only other thing you could do if you wanted to would be a bit of EQ and maybe add some low end, just so you don't have to add another bass in between there. So it could be something. And then also a bit of more high end if you need it. But that's pretty much the sound in a sense. It's not too much of a difficult sound. It's just how you utilize it basically. Now the cool thing about this is because it's very simple, you can do a lot with it. So for example, if you wanted to maybe add a comb filter so it kind of phases through, or a flanger or something, or change the waveform to maybe a square. You've got so many different variations of what you could do. Another cool thing I like is actually when you bring the pitch cutoff down a little bit more. So if we just bring it up, just hear the full velocity of what it can be. I like it just a little bit over because it gives it a sort of a closer sound, but it's still quite wide. But that's basically the sound. Now, that's just in the massive, but there's other things you can do to it. For example, you can compress it, or you can add some room reverb to it. It gives it a lot of different textures, no matter what you do afterwards, but that's the basis of the sound. Okay, so I've just gone ahead and made a little MIDI clip, so it sounds a bit like this. Or using something called parallel chords, which we can go into a theory tutorial. But what I'm going to be showing you on the sound design basis is just the process I showed you at the beginning of the video. So the processing I did really was just a bit of compression, and I used the multiband dynamics to get this effect. Now the idea of this processing was to kind of increase the release on the high end. So what you want to do is compress the high end enough to turn back up the output so the high end is a little bit more compressed, and it just kind of it helps wash over the chords a bit better. So we're going to go straight into it. So we're going to be using B and A, which is below the threshold and above the threshold. So first of all, we're going to concentrate on the high end here. So we're just going to solo the high end so you can hear it. Now let's set the threshold as at the threshold of -6 is a bit too low, so we're just going to push it up a bit more. And obviously, the more I move it down and up, you can't actually hear a difference. Now, the way you start hearing a difference is when you pull up the ratio. So we're just going to pull it up a tiny bit. Cool. And also, before we actually, so if we imagine this in a chain, so input, effect, and then output, we're just going to boost the input of it. Not too much, but just enough for it to really be acting a lot. Now we'll concentrate on the mid-band. So in the mid-band we're doing something similar, but we'll be using a bit more ratio. So take it down a bit more. You can see the mid-band really kind of comes out of its shell a bit more. So we're going to push the input a bit more as well. Cool, that's good. And then finally the low, we're going to set it to 100 Hertz. Push the input of that. That's good. And then finally do the same we're going to push the threshold a bit higher. Let's push it quite a lot. And then take it down. Cool, so that's pretty good. So next we're going to go into the above region, and this is the decibels above the threshold. That's this section here, the blue highlighted section. So let's concentrate back on the highs because this is the most important. And let's just boost this a bit more. Okay, now we're just going to whack it all the way up, down, sorry. So you can hear, if I just boost the output this bit more. So you can really hear that it's like, it's not as staccated and not as accented, but that's good because it helps kind of foam over the highs a bit more. Take it down a bit. Use 32 just because it's quite a lot and we want it to have that effect anyway, that over compressed sound. Now let's go to the mids. And we'll boost the input quite a bit as well. Take that down. Cool, so that's quite good. So it's still a bit of staccato there, but boost that more as well. Now the lows. So we'll do a similar thing. So boost the. I always forget that. So it's coming in quite hot already there. So let's bring it down. Cool. So that works. And let's just boost the overall low end of that. So I'm going to do it without the solo on. So this is without. And with. And then from here you can kind of control the overall levels of the mids, high and low. So hope you enjoyed the tutorial. Don't forget to subscribe if you want to see more videos like this, and please leave a comment if you liked it. Just remember that the project for this will be available for download in the description below. And that's pretty much it. Until next time, cheers, bye.